Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Our guest today is the founder of the Cancer Blueprint, a mental health specialist and a rising leader in the medical cannabis industry. During a life-changing 4 years, he faced and overcame stage 4 terminal cancer on 3 separate occasions, while at the same time simultaneously supporting his mother with stage 3 bowel cancer. Today, he's going to show you how to deal with uncertainty during COVID-19 pandemic. Would you please put your hands together and help us welcome to the Mental Detox podcast, our good friend, Chad Wolkedin.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Lovely intro.
Mate, you're a rock star. Not once, not twice, but 3 times you beat stage 4 cancer. During that 4-year period, what did your life look like?
Dedication and perseverance, I would say, are the first things that come to mind. And then coming back to core principles. So coming back to first principles, which needs to link to a why. So it needs to link like what is my life about and why am I going to get up every day and crawl for my survival? And what is that going to entail? And then from that, there's a number of different habits. There's a mindset, there's interactions, there's a transformation that occurs internally and then in the world around you as well. But it all stems from asking yourself that question about why is this important to me and what am I chasing? And for me to be able to then, you go, yeah.
Had you considered your why before before you got cancer for the first time? Had you considered it?
I would say that as a young man, that there were fleeting thoughts about it, but there was never the courage to believe it. And I think I had to leverage, like I think a lot of young men need to do, and I think they need to leverage off someone else's belief before they can believe it. And I was very fortunate to have a loving wife and my mother, so very strong women around me within my experiences who were able to believe in me. And then from that belief, I was then able to see what I was capable of. And I'll give you an example of that. So I got diagnosed as a 29-year-old. So I was working in mental health, working in child protection in the front line over in the UK. Some pretty intense circumstances, as you can imagine. Children are at risk, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of violence, and you're in London. So I was working in one of the most complex boroughs in the UK. And there was, how am I going for time as well? Can you just give me an indication? Because I know I can kind of talk. So
we're going to be here for a total of 12 minutes. So keep going. If
okay, sure.
We're going to drive down in on it.
Sure. Okay. Excellent. So yeah, a very intense role, a lot of stress that was occurring, and yeah, very, very challenging circumstances. I was diagnosed as a 29-year-old, and I was then raced back to Australia, had a 20 centimetre by 15 centimetre cancer removed, and then I got placed on a chemotherapy, which was
20 centimetres by 15 centimetres.
Wow.
20 centimetres. Think of a rugby or a rugby league ball. That was inside of me, yeah.
Wow.
So, and then they took my kidney out.
When you discovered it, was it that big when you discovered it?
That's when they discovered it, yeah. So I got raced to hospital in an ambulance. And during that time, you're a 29-year-old guy. I was snowboarding in the Alps at the time and never thought, you think you may have some glandular fever or you might have a flu. You start making these crazy packs. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you've been in that situation, but you're very desperate because something's not right, but you never think that that's going to occur. But then life takes a very, very sudden shift, and it didn't occur from anything that was told to me. I've said this a number of times. It was how they said it to me. So obviously I had experiences of working with people, and I had a very caring doctor, and she came into my room. I'd been in this room for 4 days, and I just sort of look in her eye, and I knew straight away. And it's a life-changing moment, that's for sure, because then my core, like my direction, has taken a significant change from there. So I got put on this chemotherapy, which was a derivative of DDT. So banned from human consumption 1972. And I was taking that AM and PM. So a lot of changes, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry. What I look at a lot of the time is identity. So I came back to Australia after working in the UK as a guy with stage 4 cancer. So you can imagine not only how I'm seeing the world, but how I see the world seeing me. So it's very complex. So just to speed this up, I went through all these different changes, and then on my first reoccurrence, I was in hospital, and one of the nurses asked me, if you had to describe yourself in one word, what would that be? And I thought about it for a while. It was like, what's your favorite movie? I want to give a good response, right? I don't want to just say something. And I said, latent. And I really believed that what I meant there was that I hadn't been the true person. I hadn't shown up as well as I could have in the past, and the best of me was to come. And so there was this process of me evolving as a man, but I didn't have the courage when I was younger, and the belief to be able to live in accordance to that. Now the question is, am I doing that now? I still think there's plenty more for me to come, and I don't think I'm my best as yet. And it's that thing, like Matthew McConaughey says, it's always that person 10 years ahead of you. So there's been growth, and there's been, a lot of different challenges that I've overcome, and some success that I've had recently from my work and the message that I'm giving out, which is great. But I still see that the best of me is yet to come.
So not just once, not twice, but 3 times. And did you go through this same thought pattern every time? Did you have to reinvent yourself every time? What was going on there?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I think if I went into each occasion thinking that I could just do the same thing, I ultimately would be getting the same result. So I had to be able to take responsibility as well. So a lot of people were saying that I was too hard on myself. But ultimately, what I had to do was to be able to go, I'm in this situation. Well, how do I get myself out of it? How do I take responsibility? How do I make different changes? What can I do to be able to influence my outcome? And for me, it all comes back to a mindset. And one of the things that helped me the most was being able to, if I had to see myself in a certain way, and then I had to have my behaviors, my thinking and my interactions had to be in accordance to a belief. And so the way that I saw myself was an Olympic athlete. So I was an Olympic athlete, and that meant that there were no days off. That meant that when I'm eating a certain way, which is very restrictive. So when other people are like, how can you do that? When I'm having a life that is made up of these non-negotiables, which continue to this day. And on a day of my wedding, I continue to non-negotiables. And if I'm flying, they're non-negotiables. Like, they're non-negotiables for a reason, because they're set up. And it all links back to this belief that if I'm to get through this and I'm to stand on my podium at the end with my gold medal, it's not going to be fans clapping. I'm not going to be in a stadium. It's probably going to be having breakfast with my wife, or having a cup of coffee and watching the sunrise. These smaller moments in life is that gold medal.
Yeah.
So you're going through all of this personally. I've seen your photos there. You cut open from here down to there. They've opened you up like a school book, and then your mum's got stage 3 bowel cancer. How do you deal with that whilst you're dealing with your own shit? How do you deal with that?
To take a step back and to be able to recognize that during that time I'd already learned a lot, but then there's also the relationship of mother and son. So there's certain things that she had to do at her own pace, and there were certain things that I had to experience from a different lens. So while, I think very important in this time with the uncertainty that exists, the biggest thing we want is control. So when we lose control, there's anxiety, there's fear, there's loss, etc. Right? So there's a whole range of different feelings or different events, and then they start to compound, and it makes it much worse. So when I was in a situation when I was managing my own things, everything was okay because I had my plan and how I was going to see it. But then it was when it happened to mum as well, and happened at the same time, where for me there was a lot of guilt. So the biggest thing that I experienced was guilt, and that was probably from too much information. So when I first got diagnosed, I was already looking at research papers, etc., and I was aware of the increased likelihood, if one member of a family was unwell, the increased likelihood of another person. So when I came back, and this is often the case with a lot of people who go through cancer, they're not thinking about themselves, they're thinking about their loved ones. So when I came back, I'm the youngest of 3 sons. I lived at home with my parents. I got fired from my job. I was under pension. I'm taking daily chemotherapy, but my concern was, how can I reduce the impact for others? So how can I be, and that's very important when we get to like, because it needs to come back to a purpose. And so if you've got a purpose, the purpose can't be about yourself. The purpose needs to be about something else. The purpose needs to be about something that you're in pursuit of. Yeah. So for me, there was a lot of guilt. So when mum got diagnosed, there was the hardest 2 weeks of my life for sure, because there was a concern, like I imagine some of your listeners are having at the moment, about, are my loved ones going to be okay? You know, maybe I've got an elderly. Sorry, you go. Yeah.
Mate, I've heard something very similar before. We were working with a client years ago, and her father was diagnosed with cancer. And as the father was going through cancer, she started to have these irrational thoughts. And of course, they started out very loving and caring, but they were quite irrational at a subconscious level. She developed a belief that nobody should go through this alone. And based on psychosomatic illness and the way she tells the story, she says that she believed that she developed cancer herself after repeating this, affirmation, nobody should go through this alone. So to support the father, she ended up with cancer herself. And she will tell you it was psychosomatic in nature because that belief system was so strong. And she developed it simultaneously. And it was such an impact when we had heard it, just understanding how strong that connection between mind and body is. 100%. So we've seen this as well. And right now we're living in unprecedented times. There's this invisible enemy. And, what you're saying here, you've had this cancer inside of you, the size of a football. It was invisible to you because you kind of think about it. How can you have something that big inside your body and not even realize it to that stage? So again, we've got this invisible enemy. It's a common enemy at the moment. It's called coronavirus. So right now, borders are being shut down, people are dying. And for the survivors, what range of feelings are they going through? Because I'm sure that you're a survivor, but other people didn't survive. What feelings did you go through as you survived and others died?
Good question. So in terms of the survivors, so people who haven't been diagnosed, so people who are healthy at the moment, but there's a risk of coronavirus, is that the question? So what would they be experiencing? What possible feelings and emotions may they be having at the moment? Is that the question?
We've heard it recently that people are having survivor guilt. And what they're saying is, my business is okay, but somebody else has lost their business. So from your experience of going through cancer and surviving, and that's a loss for other people, what would people be going through during COVID-19 as they survive and others don't, whether it be financially, with their job, etc.?
Yeah, exactly. So I think uncertainty is massive for a lot of people, right? So the biggest thing that I think a lot of people are worried about, as you mentioned before, is the differences or the possibility of what may occur for either a loved one, what's going to happen with their finances, and what's going to happen with their health. I think it all comes back to, in some ways, survival. So how can my business survive? How can my parents, or how can my auntie, how can my grandparents survive? How can I survive myself? In terms of people who have gone through coronavirus, they've been diagnosed, but they haven't passed away. I think I wouldn't, because there's so many people who are having it, a younger generation as well. So it's not going to impact them as much, right? But in terms of what they may be experiencing about a guilt, I'm not too sure, to be honest. It's a very good question. I would like to know as well. I know that if we're looking at cancer, or if we're looking at other challenges that people face, it is common. I spoke to someone last week and someone close to her passed away. And there is that thought, like a lot of people around me fall and die. It's unfortunate. At times people come to me, maybe too late, or maybe there's not, I can't always like produce miracles. I can support people to process different circumstances, but I don't make any crazy claims out there. And it's unfortunate that there is a lot of loss out there. And I can see how people do feel, well, is it my turn next? Or how did I get, like, there are different circumstances and different feelings that they can go through. And there is that element of guilt for sure. But I don't know if I could comment directly about what people would be experiencing who have gone through coronavirus. Yeah.
What we're hearing from business people, and it was very clear the other day, business owner said, I am scared and I am stressed. We're also hearing
100%.
a lot of people talking about the fear of the unknown. So because
Yes.
it's this invisible virus, I just traveled over to Malaysia, and life's got to go on. I traveled to Malaysia and everybody's wearing masks, but as a professional speaker, you can get up on stage and speak with a mask, but it's not all that good for your reputation. So you get up there and there's this invisible enemy. So then you go through these feelings of, what if I do have it? What if I actually bring it home? And the other day, I got home from Malaysia. I started to take extra vitamins, and I started to take vitamin B because my wife had these vitamin B tablets in the drawer. And I started to take them, but then I started to get sick. So I said to Ninny, I said, I think I better go down to the doctor. Got to the doctor, the doctor's surgery, they're freaking out. And you could see the fear in them. They're ringing my wife going, is he infected? Like if he's infected, he can't come to the surgery. And I said, look, no signs and symptoms. They checked the blood, they checked the temperature, everything's fine. The doctors freaked out. And then I came back home, still felt sick, went to the hospital, came home, still had diarrhea. Next day, I go to take these vitamin B tablets. And Ninny says to me, what are you taking those for? I said, I'm taking your vitamin B tablets. And she said, they're not vitamin B, they're my laxatives.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Because of my mentality, I say, well, I'm 95 kilos, I'm tall, I'm thick. I can take a few vitamins. So I'm taking all these vitamins and I'm taking 6 laxatives a day. And every time I'm in the bathroom, I'm taking more laxatives and I'm thinking they're vitamin B. So
crazy.
Other people around me are going through this range of emotions. Ninny's fearing, in advance. And she's obviously thinking about the future. Well, what if he's got it? What if we got it? Mother-in-law's ringing up, what's happening? People at the hospital are checking in, what's happening? So we can see all these different fears that, if I would have had diarrhea 3 weeks ago, nobody would have worried about it.
Yeah.
But this new
same thing for me I'm stuck in Peru at the moment. So I'm in Peru and the borders got closed 11 days ago. So I'm meant to be flying up to the States, and then I'm meant to go to Australia and the UK to start this year that I have planned and continue moving ahead with my plans, and all borders are closed. So I'm stuck here. And then 2 Fridays ago, I came down with a sore throat, and I've just become an uncle. My wife's brother my sister-in-law just gave birth. So we were at the hospital the day before, and then I had a sore throat. And I was like, I knew I didn't have coronavirus, but it's not the sort of thing you want to come out and say to people that you're not feeling well, right? Because at that time, if you say you've got a flu, everyone, while they may not say it, will be thinking, has he got coronavirus? So I knew that I was aware that I didn't want to share it on social media. I didn't want to do anything. And I also didn't want to share it to too many people because I was like, I know there's going to be all these questions and I can't say, definitely I don't have it, can I? Because it's just been diagnosed and there's going to be elevated concern. So I had to make the decision at that stage to isolate, and I've been in isolation ever since. I didn't have it. It was just a cold that I had for a day, and then I ended up, uncertainty was existing. So what did I do? I put myself into a 3-day fast. So I believe in fasting, and I have a fasting protocol for my performance to get the best out of my health, and then also for my focus, etc. And then I do a longer fast. So every quarter I do a 3-day fast, and it felt like the right time to get control back. So I put myself in a fasted state for a period of time and immediately tried to get my control back as well. And for getting control, it was like, okay, so why am I doing this fast? And it doesn't need to be fasting, right? But if we're looking at heightened uncertainty, as you spoke about before, as the business owner that you mentioned may have had, if we're looking at uncertainty, whether it's about health or business, we want to look at a number of factors, right? So we want to look at how do we bring this back to purpose? So what sort of purpose is there at the moment? So how can you come back to a purpose? And a good way to look at that is to have a look at a framework. It is everything can be in life, everything can be an opportunity or an agitation, right? And that's something to look, and you can apply this to your life at the moment. So everything is either an opportunity or an agitation. So what does that mean? So if we have a look, an agitation is a stress. So at the moment, we've got coronavirus. So obviously there's going to be a lot of stresses. Is there stress about my finances? Is there stress about my security of my business? Is there, stress about how long my restaurant, my service is not going to operate for? Is there going to be concern about a loved one? Like, all these things are stresses. So they're massive agitations at the moment. And then there's social media is going wild, and virtually every conversation you're having at the moment is going to be faced or has some element of coronavirus associated with it. So it's just the perfect place for just stress to be able to intensify, right? But then the other way to look at it is, well, what is the opportunity here? So what I've tried to look at is, well, if I can have an opportunity to focus on my health, what does that look like in terms of my daily habits, right? So how do I then ramp up my daily habits? And like you, does that mean that I'm always fairly focused on my nutrition, but at the moment, am I taking additional vitamins? Am I ensuring that my vegetable intake is extremely high? Am I limiting meals to twice a day and eating within an 8-hour window just to ensure that I'm not outside, I'm not exercising as much? So how do I get out of this? Like, the opportunity is, how do I come back to what's important for me throughout this time to then be able to finish this period better than before? And if we have a look at something, how we want to reference that, if we look at markets, right? So when Warren Buffett says at times when you should be greedy when people are fearful, and then when people are fearful, you should be greedy. Well, if we have a look at that at the moment, well, what opportunity is there for my business at the moment? How do I, as someone who supports people with their mental health, how do I, as someone who's got a program and to be able to support people throughout this time, how do I then get this message out to be able to demonstrate to people the value that I can give? But how do I also be innovative? And how do I also understand that there's challenges that people may be facing with their finances? So how do I create an interesting initiative to then be able to launch this application that I'm doing to then solve a key problem for people, but not charge anything through it? So how do I link up with 5 therapists around the world and deliver this free counseling, which I'm going to be doing? So all that gives me something to focus on, right? So if anyone's got a business out there, how is this going to force innovation? How can you improve your services to people? What sort of review can you take? What sort of review can you undertake at the moment to be able to come out of this in a better position? Like, these are some of the questions that, I had to ask myself, and I think are very helpful to ask others. And if you've got that purpose, I can come out of this better. I can use this time to restart this. There's been these 3 books that I wanted to look at. I can listen to this whole podcast set. Whatever it is, you can create that opportunity. And then from there, you can have a focus. So the opportunity, think about that as like the strategic game plan. And then you've got the focus, which is more tactical. So what are the things that you're going to be doing on a daily basis, and these habits that are going to be in place to help you execute over the longer term? Brilliant. Yeah, so there's some of the things. And then on top of that, how do you go all in on your health? So if there's a big concern about your health and the health of a loved one, what can you be doing to improve your chances of living better for longer? So what does that look like at the moment? As I said before, maybe it's nutrition, maybe it's looking at your movement. Meditation could be helpful for your immune system. How do I start exploring what sort of meditations are available? Chad mentioned something about fasting. Could that be something for me? I don't think I could do that. But then it's the question of, but I've got time at the moment, right? I spoke to a client last week and I told him a story that when I got diagnosed with cancer, I set up some rules very early on for my life. So I wasn't allowed to watch TV during the day. I had to focus on 2 hours of writing, and then I had to focus on these different areas of my physical health as well. So if I didn't know how to eat at that stage. In some ways, I knew how to eat, but I didn't know the best way to optimize my health. So then it was doing some research, right? So what I mentioned to him is that now, 6 years on, everything that I do and the life that I've created, where I am my own boss and I have different businesses and I operate, services across 4 continents, all that comes back to the 2 years where I was in absolutely debilitated from chemotherapy. So during those 2 years, I set up structures in my life to allow myself to get my thoughts, to be able to process them and start coming up with these theories about how I can start testing these strategies that I've been using with other people on myself. And to this day, all my work virtually links back to that period. So in some ways, if you want to look at it, it's like, well, how do I change an adversity into an advantage, right? And that could be one of the key take homes for your audience. So at the moment, whatever service you're providing or whatever business you have, if you're facing an adversity, how can you come out of this so that you can demonstrate that this can be an advantage, that you can look back at this to say, wow, it was during that time that we made this key decision. During this time, I started listening to X and they started showing me this. During that time, I came upon this idea. Like, what can your advantage be during this stage, which is going to set you on, which is going to set your life?
Brilliant.
So, there's some over to you.
Yeah. So Chad, for our friends and the follower, where will be the best place for them to look for your excellent work so they can get more certain in their life? Where will be the best place to reach out to you?
Instagram, LinkedIn, and then I've got two websites as well. So you can catch me for my personal services at cwcounselling.com.au. And then you can go to www.ontracka, so ONTRACKA.com for free mental health support. So I've got an app which is just past beta testing at the moment that is available. It's got free meditations, 3 breathing programs, and it's got a mental health program in there, all available for free, which was tested in a proof of concept in 2018. So people who watch these videos, people who are chronically unwell, we had a 50% reduction in their worry about the future, a 50% reduction in their isolation, and a 33% improvement in their capacity to cope.
Wow.
That was after 5 weeks. Yes, it was great. And then now we've also got these additional features. So it's all about keeping people on track. So as I said before, like a key, like looking at that tactical level. So focus, like what are the focus is going to be on a daily basis? How do you stay on track regardless of what's going on for you? That's one of the ideas behind what I've been working on. And it links back to all those years ago when I was unwell and I was staring at a ceiling because of the chemotherapy, but it was all about that capacity to turn an adversity into an advantage.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, what we want you to do now is head over and start to follow Chad on social media. Make sure you head over to his website and we'll put all the links below so you can just click them and head over there now. Well, Chad, thanks for joining us from Peru today. Enjoy your journey and we'll touch base again soon. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.